Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Michael Landaway, and I'll be your moderator today in the fourth of five topics in our Secure the Enterprise webinar series. Today, we will focus on securing your infrastructure as a service cloud within Amazon, Azure, or Google Compute. Our presenter will be Gil Friedrich, Avanan CEO, and during the call, feel free to ask questions using the Q&A panel on the right of your screen, and I will ask them of Gil as we go. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Gil Friedrich.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. We'll do basically two things today. At a high level, we'll tell you or try to summarize the things that our customers are challenged when it comes to securing their AWS, Azure, and Google Compute environments, and then focus on the Avanan solution and how we help them secure those environments. As Michael mentioned, if you have any question, please type it into the chat window. I will try to answer as we go. Just to tell you a little bit about who we are, assuming you don't know much about us. Basically, Avanan is a cloud security platform where we partnered with multiple security vendors out there, now over 60, created cloud versions of their technologies, and now that everything is virtualized, we basically allow you to literally within a few clicks enable any security layers on top of your cloud assets. So with any cloud, any security, one click. Today we won't talk about, Office 365 or Box or G Suite, but we'll focus on the challenges and capabilities within the infrastructure as a service environment. So a slide about our partners. Basically, the idea is that whenever you want to enable one of these technologies on our platform, we already created cloud pre-configured versions within our IaaS environment that allows you to start them with a click. So this is a little bit a 1 minute background about who we are. As we have this conversation with users of, Amazon AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, normally the problem they point out to us is this lack of consistent protection across all cloud assets, and it comes, whether you use one platform, even worse when they use multiple platforms. The other challenge they have is that there are solutions for these environments, but it's normally a point solution to solve a point problem. And as one of the CISOs that became our customer said that to us, he said, I have 27 point solutions and I have 3 people to manage it. The other challenge customers bring up is, I already have this data stack that I build around my data center. As I move everything to a cloud environment, to an IaaS environment, how can I replicate everything I built? And it could be DLP policies, and it could be malware, etc. How can I replicate all that to where my data is moving to? The sort of fourth is the nature of cloud, but probably the core of it. While in the data center, someone needed to speak to IT in order to start a service. When it comes to IaaS, that's no longer the case. So now the end users, the developers, multiple people within the organization can spin up and down different services. And not only IT, doesn't necessarily provision those services. Sometimes they wouldn't know. And even if they do know from the management interface, they lack some control. They cannot SSH to a, environment that someone else spun up because they don't know the credentials and they don't have the key. So this is a serious challenge that, the bigger the organization, the bigger this challenge, but we pretty much hear it from anyone that is using infrastructure as a service. And then the last one is, goes without saying, but there are some compliance aspects as you move to the cloud that might have not existed in your data center, especially if your company is a B2B, you're selling to other businesses. They will ask you, are you SOC 2 compliant, or do you have ISO, 27001? And obviously with GDPR coming in, those questions of where is my data going to be stored and how are you going to manage it come up a lot. As you translate what SOC 2 means, what ISO means, all of a sudden it's about, managing access and having a patch management tool and firewall management and so on and so forth. So driven from compliance, a lot of our customers are deriving security requirements around their cloud assets. So before we dive into specific capabilities, at the very high level, we connect to all these services through API, through basically a management and admin interface to see all the data that is being uploaded, all the event logs, all the access logs, etc. And then within our platform, we cloudified, that's the term we use, all the different security tools already coming pre-configured. So now that we have this connectivity, we're able to monitor all these events, scan them with the security tools that you choose for your cloud assets, and bring it all into a unified dashboard that presents all the results within one screen. So this is the high level. Yeah, I understand there's a question.
Yes, actually, it's a couple of questions. One is, are all those tools running in my cloud or your cloud? And do I need to license and manage all of those tools?
Great question. So we host all of them in our cloud. You don't need to manage them. You don't need to manage their configuration, etc. It all comes at the end as a service. And yeah, great question. Very relevant. So when we start deploying our platform, normally the order of thinking within the discussion with the customer is, A, do you know who's using those cloud assets? In some cases, they don't. And then the question is, from a shadow IT perspective, where is this environment being used in my organization? The second question is, okay, so now I understand who's using it, how many tenants I have. Once I met those, the next question is about configuration. Configuration is all about, who has access, what's being encrypted and what's not encrypted, possible vulnerabilities, and patch management in those environments, and so on and so forth. The third question we normally address is about the data itself, the usage itself. So what's being uploaded, what's being downloaded? Is there a potential way for malware to get into the organization, or maybe for sensitive information to get out of the organization, etc.? So this is after we sort of took care of the infrastructure services, the configuration of access, etc. Now the question is, how is it being used, and do I have the right protection? And finally, the question is everything about auditing. Can I send everything to Splunk or, to a SIEM that they already have configured? If there is an incident, am I able to go back and see everything that happened? And so on and so forth. So normally we frame the conversation around these issues, and then when we come to secure the IaaS, this is normally the order of how a trial and deployment would look like. The first step will focus on the discovering of the services. And the next step will scan and map out issues with configuration, and specifically around security, unsecure configurations. The third step would be to secure the data. And finally, it would be around the ongoing monitoring and automating policy and so on and so forth. In the next couple of slides, what we'll do, we'll dive a little deeper into each one of these steps and give you some of the examples of how it would look like on the Avanan platform and what it could do from a capability perspective. So Discover Shadow IT, at a very high level, there are two methods that we use in order to figure out who's using these services in the organization. The first one is somewhat, I would say, commonly used with companies that do Shadow IT. We can take logs from things like your DNS or your firewall. You can just upload them, and then we know, based on access and admin access, who's accessing those services. We added something unique to us that we also patented, and this is the ability to look through the emails and tell you who's using those services. And the reason we added it is, A, through email we can know very specifically who's the user in the organization that is using it. We can also know who's the admin of the service. So we can go back to the admin. And then most importantly, what we've seen, especially with large organizations, is that you might already have an Azure or an AWS that you provision, that you sanction. But then someone else in the organization might start another service that is unsanctioned. Through just analyzing traffic, it's a little hard to differentiate the two. But by analyzing the email, we know exactly who's an admin, and you can have a sanctioned and at the same time an unsanctioned service. So this is why we normally recommend at least the preliminary scan of your email environment, and we already connect very transparently to Office 365 or G Suite in order to perform this scan. So I'll jump to the screenshot here. This is normally how we would show the screen. Try to focus here specifically on Shadow IT. Obviously, we discover other usage of other cloud assets. But in this case, you can see that this organization is using Azure and AWS. And you can see the specific users. And you can also see when someone started a service versus when someone is just using the service. So this is the first step. This is the ability to basically go into an organization and say, this is what is being used from an IaaS perspective right now. The second step is to connect to this service through the admin credentials, and then basically perform a scan that will flag out configurations that are suspicious or unsecure, etc. So it could be risky network access logs, it could be data access that you don't want, for example, an S3 bucket that is open to everyone. If you standardize on MFA or multi-factor, and this is one of the requirements in some of the compliance regulations that I mentioned earlier, so many organizations will enable MFA. If someone is not MFA protected, that will be something that's flagged out. Obviously, if something's unencrypted and encryption is a requirement, missing patches from your payloads, from your virtual compute servers, all of these will be flagged out. So in this example here, we basically show you that configuration dashboard where, this is AWS. So you could see within S3 buckets, I have 7 buckets, but 6 are encrypted. And then with EC2 instances, in this example, I have 116 EC2 instances, 17 are open to the public. So basically allowing you to map those and start handling and looking into those. And another example here would be an actual event where someone created an S3 bucket, but the bucket is publicly accessible. And pretty recently, there was a security incident that hit global news about a U.S. government S3 bucket that was basically open publicly and caused data leakage. So this is one of the things to flag out. And very similarly, if there's a configuration of VPC, that's the Amazon AWS term for firewall rules. If it's open to everyone, once again, needs to be flagged out. So just to summarize step 2, in step 2, the goal is to say, now that I am sanctioning all my environment that I discovered in step 1, I want to first start monitoring the configuration and start flagging out suspicious or unsecure configurations. This is what step 2 is all about. Step 3 is about the data, right? So now I want to secure the actual data that goes through the cloud. And specifically in this stage, we want to make sure there's no malware coming in. In some cases, no malware leaving as well. So if you upload information and someone consumes that from your customer audience, some of our customers are concerned about that as well. So basically scan everything for malware as it's being uploaded. DLP, obviously, the question of, is there any sensitive information that I uploaded? If encryption is a requirement, then that as well. And finally, anomalies and account takeover.